This is the beginning scene of Shameless, but it's updated. This is season 10. That's no longer Fiona dragging Frank out of the bathroom. That is Debbie. I love what they did here. They mixed a lot of the original introduction with some new scenes here. Like this is the original. Carl's being a menace. Kevin and V is the original. I'm not really sure what Ian's doing right here, but that's the original intro to the show, and I love it. But they do have new parts mixed in with it, like Liam and Franny here. I believe the original was Debbie and Liam doing that scene. This is probably Lip and Ian going at it, fighting. So I love what they did to start season 10. Now, season 10 of Shameless aired in 2019. This is 2023, but I'm late to the game. I never watched Shameless as it was going on. I didn't start watching this show until about August or September of this year. This brings me to this. Now, this is kind of a little raunchy here. I'm sure that's Mickey and Ian, and this is Lip and Tammy. But I do have one question for you guys. The original intro at the very last scene always showed, I assumed it was Fiona and a dude, and it always showed a dude's ass. That was the introduction from the very first episode. And who was she with? Stupid ass hat. In the first season, she was with Steve / Jimmy / Jack. So is that Steve's ass? Whose butt is that? Let me know in the comments if you have any idea. It's got to be Steve or Jimmy. Now, despite how we kind of started this video off, this is not a season 10 recap or my opinion of season 10 of Shameless. However, since I am almost towards the end of season 10, again, a late bloomer to the show, I would like to say that I actually am pleasantly surprised what they have done with this show. I had low expectations going into it with Emmy Rossum, Fiona Gallagher leaving the show, but there's a really nice thing that I like that they did. They didn't try to replace Fiona Gallagher with another new main character. Sometimes shows have done that. One that comes to mind is that 70s show. And I know you're really not supposed to talk about the last season of that 70s show. Eric is gone. They tried to add this new character, Randy. Nobody likes Randy. Nobody likes the last season of that 70s show. Shameless did not do that, so I like it. Another thing that comes to my mind is the season seems to have flown by. I'm on episode 11, and I thought like I was in episode 5 or 6 when I first realized that. Seems to have really flown by, and there's a ton of stuff that's happened throughout that season. But maybe another time for a season 10 breakdown of Shameless. But for today's video, I'm still in my feelings with Fiona Gallagher having left the show. I'm not dealing with it too well. No, I'm just kidding. But I do want to go over Fiona Gallagher. And we're not going to go into depth on Fiona, Emmy Rossum's character too much. Did I like Fiona? Did I not like Fiona? However, at some point, I do see myself maybe ranking, maybe making a tier list of the characters from Shameless, who I like the most, who I like the least, but that is not today. Instead, we're going to talk about the men in Fiona Gallagher's life. Now, looking back at it, Fiona did hook up with a decent amount of guys and did date about 4 or 5 guys, even married one. But there is the honorable mention list. We'll go over some guys that she hooked up with, maybe were around for a few episodes, but weren't really a boyfriend or a fiance or a husband. The first one that comes to mind is Robbie, who is the brother of Mike, her boss / boyfriend, who she cheats on with her brother, Robbie. Robbie is an addict and leads Fiona down a dark path that gets her into some trouble. So there's Robbie. He wasn't good for Fiona. Then we have Richard as well. This is in no particular order. Now, Richard is, if you remember Jasmine, Jasmine introduces Richard, some business guy who comes in and out of town. He's probably married, but looking for a good time. I think he ends up taking Fiona to a wedding, and they do hook up. But and I think Richard's thing is he's got a fetish for like poor girls who come from nothing. So nothing really happened with them, but he was on the show for a few episodes. We have Craig, who's also from, I think it's called Chicago Fire. I don't know the dude's name, but it's like her old high school crush that she ends up hooking up with. She tries not to since he's a married man, but then she ends up hooking up with him in like the back of their van. With all their kids' stuff. And, if you're a parent and you have a van, you know that your van probably looks pretty disgusting because of your children. And she's in the back hooking up with him. And then his wife finds out and goes after Fiona. So that was kind of a few funny episodes there. There was Tony, the policeman, who actually was in the show more than just the scenes with Fiona. He was a family friend for sure, but he did like Fiona. They did hook up, I believe, in his cop car. And he tried to take her home to his mom already pretty early on. But she pretty much was only interested in like a casual thing. And then Tony actually ended up being gay later, so that probably would not have worked out. The last on the honorable mention list is one that is closer to an actual boyfriend, and that is Adam. So I believe he is around in season 2 when Fiona and V are working at that club. I think that's where she meets him. And then, I think they're kind of dating. He's more of he was like a financial guy or whatnot. And actually he's the one who like got Fiona back into running and things like that. But at the end of the day, when Jimmy/Steve comes back into her life, Adam hits the road. So that's it for the honorable mention list of the men who dated/banged Fiona Gallagher. But for our list and ranking the men in Fiona Gallagher's life, we have, not in any order yet, we've got Jimmy/Steve. That's one person, even though he goes by multiple names. We have Mike, we have Sean, we have Gus, and we have Ford. So let's get into today's video finally and rank the men in Fiona Gallagher's life. Coming in at number 5 on the list is her ex-husband, Gus. Now, you might think, maybe he should be up higher on the list. I mean, she did marry him, right? However, the entire storyline between her and Gus is crazy. It just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I believe what happens is there's a group of musicians that frequent Patsy's where she works. And I think Fiona actually is trying to hook up with another member of the band. And so she meets up at a bar with the group, again, for a different dude. That guy's girlfriend ends up being there. Fiona, quick on her feet, plays it off like she's there to meet Gus. And so they hang out for that night. I think they ended up hooking up. They end up hooking up for maybe a week at max. And then they decide to get married because why not? Things don't really go well for their marriage. In fact, there's not an actual wedding. They just go to the courthouse, get married. And then things really go downhill from there. And despite the fact that they don't know each other at all, the main reason for that is Steve/Jimmy comes back into Fiona's life. She hooks up with him. Does the right thing in telling Gus. Obviously, he's not too happy about it. He then goes on tour because he's a famous musician. He's in a band, goes out on tour, and really the relationship just flames out. Now, I get it. Fiona should not have cheated on him, blah, blah, blah. They're husband and wife, but they literally had only been dating for a week and then got married. So, but Gus was heartbroken, right? And he did get his revenge on Fiona. Coming in at number 4 on the list is Ford. Now, Ford, I think, just has a weird storyline. Another thing that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. He's mysterious, and there's a reason why he's mysterious. But they meet because Fiona buys an apartment building and wants to basically live in one of the apartments, and so she's cleaning it up, fixing it. I guess there's some problem with, she wants to get rid of like a wooden door or whatever, and some friends in the building recommend Ford. He's a carpenter, he's a master of the wood. And so he comes in and is like, I can't let you, get rid of this door. I'll fix it up for you. I'll refurbish it. So that's his story. He's got an accent. He's Irish, which some girls probably go crazy for. I think Fiona started liking him immediately. He does seem like a nice guy. Like he just fixes it up for free. He also at first doesn't seem interested in Fiona. However, I think he's just kind of playing hard to get her more interested in him, because she definitely does chase him. Whereas for the most part, the other men in her life chase after her. But and then obviously, like I said, Ford, while he is around more in season 9, he exits the show by basically it coming out that he's married with a kid. He's been lying to her the whole time, even though he moves in with her. And so, like I said, his character is just weird. When in the first few episodes that he was in, we found out that that a lot of ex-girlfriends, hooked up with a lot of people, helps his friends get pregnant. You're right. People who are struggling to get pregnant, or like lesbian couples that want a baby, he's there to lend a hand or his dick, if you know what I mean. So his character is just weird, and then he ends up really fucking her over, being married, having a kid, and just lying about it the whole time. And now Fiona is the main reason why she spirals hard in season 9, but he definitely doesn't help the situation. So Ford, number 4, he really can get going. Coming in at number 3 is by far the best guy that Fiona ends up dating, and that is her former boss, Mike. And Fiona absolutely fucks over Mike. I guess I did talk about how Fiona, messes up Gus, but I don't really consider that, just because they were barely together. But Fiona does Mike dirty. Now Mike pursued Fiona pretty hard. You could tell right from the start that he liked her and he was interested, and definitely pursued Fiona. Now, he's not the typical guy that Fiona goes for. He's not a bad boy. He's not an addict. He's not an adrenaline junkie or anything like that. He's just a normal dude who's nice. Comes from a normal family. And so I think Fiona is trying something new. She's trying to better her situation. So she gives Mike a chance, and then ends up completely ruining this guy. Fucks him over pretty good. After a few episodes of them dating, Mike's brother Robbie comes into the picture, who is an addict. You can tell Mike, it's his brother, but you can tell Mike has issues with Robbie, and rightfully so. The rest of the family seems pretty forgiving and pretty welcoming to Robbie. Mike is definitely a little standoffish, and for good reason, because Robbie pretty much immediately hits on Fiona. Fiona gives in. They end up hooking up. And then while Mike is like drunk and passed out, and that happens more than once. Eventually they get caught. I think Robbie just tells Mike. And obviously, Fiona and Mike break up. And then, right, that's really when Fiona spirals out of control. Robbie comes over, drops off some cocaine, some coke. Fiona accidentally, ends up leaving it out, and 3-year-old Liam gets into it. One of, if not the saddest moments of Shameless, and actually where I almost stopped watching the show. Luckily, Liam ends up being okay. Fiona does end up being a felon, going to jail for it. But when Fiona originally gets arrested for this, right, reckless endangerment and things like that, Mike actually bails her out. So pretty good dude, bailing out his ex-girlfriend who cheated on him with his very own brother, bails her out, and then says, hey, don't ever talk to me again. So Mike, being a nice guy, coming in at number 3 on the list. For number 2 and number 1, I kind of struggled going back and forth between Sean and Jimmy/Steve. I think I like Sean better. However, I kind of really disliked the way that they made him and Fiona basically break up and him leave the show. But I do like Sean. I like the actor, Dermot Mulroney. I might be saying his name wrong. He does have a cameo in Angels in the Outfield. He's also in My Best Friend's Wedding. So I liked the actor, and I did like the character for the most part, but hated the way that it ended with him. And so coming in at number 2 is Sean. Sean is the manager of Patsy's, which is basically, it's a diner. And it seems to hire addicts and felons and people who are on probation but are looking for a job, looking to better their lives and get their lives back on track. And Sean is the manager. It's where Fiona ends up working after she messes up her probation the first time and finally is able to get back on her feet and get stable, and Sean is her boss. Now, Sean and Fiona, you can tell immediately like each other. However, Sean flat out tells her, like, you are bad for me. You like chaos. I don't need that in my life. Again, he's a recovering addict, I believe, from heroin. He's got a son that he's trying to do right by and stay in his life and do everything that he can to, not relapse. So he tries to stay away from Fiona. And that is when Fiona and Gus kind of get together and things like that. But you can tell that Sean likes Fiona, doesn't really like the fact that she just randomly gets married to Gus. And then eventually the two do get together. I believe it's season 6 when they get together. And I liked Sean. Sean was, good for Fiona in the fact that, he had a hard life himself. So he knew that lifestyle. He does help out the family, but he also, wants Fiona to realize that, the rest of the Gallaghers also need to take care of themselves at times. So, but I really like Sean's character. But again, I hated the way that the show ended up, basically getting rid of Sean. So it turns out that, they get engaged. And they do end up almost getting married, but during the wedding episode, Frank reveals that Sean is using drugs again, and he has been for the last few months. And I kind of thought that while it's a very sad situation, it was more sad for the kid because Sean's kid, Will, was there, realized that his dad was using drugs again. And so that was really a hard point. But I guess I can understand why Fiona was upset and hurt, but to me, I don't feel like it was a deal breaker to completely be done. Now, the way that they kind of made the show, the way that they played it out was, maybe Fiona wasn't necessarily done with him, but Sean decided that, hey, I really need to focus on getting clean and focus on Will and can't be in your life. So, but I think, the fucked up life that Fiona had and the messed up life that Sean had, I feel like that was something that, probably didn't need to be a deal breaker in the end. But it was. And so Sean left the show, does come back the next season for an episode or two. Fiona thinks he's trying to get back with her and kind of seems like she wasn't over him yet. And then he tells her, hey, I'm actually just saying sorry. I'm going to get married, and tries to give her money, which I thought was actually kind of a shitty move. So Sean is number 2 on the list for me that Fiona was with in Shameless. So that leaves us with our number 1 man in Fiona Gallagher's life. And it's a guy who goes by 3 different names on the show: Steve, Jimmy, and then I think Jack as well. Now, the reason that I like Steve/Jimmy the most is I think the show liked him the most, gave him the most screen time. His story arc changed over multiple seasons that he was in the show. And I think ultimately viewers really liked him because he had a lot of scenes even without Fiona or without the rest of the Gallaghers. So Steve/Jimmy. Now, Steve was in the original episode, was one of the main characters, it looked like. He was seen pursuing Fiona in a club, punched a bouncer to impress her. ends up in episode 2 not liking Frank, thinks I need to get rid of Frank, and does send him to Canada, but then has to go and save him. But Steve's backstory, even though it turns out that he comes from a wealthy family. His real name is Jimmy. He was in medical school, but he dropped out of that and started going by Steve and started stealing cars. Must just be an adrenaline junkie. And Fiona liked that about him. She did. She even helped him steal some cars at first. But then at the end of season 1, he gets in some trouble. Does end up getting both Lip and Ian in trouble, but does the right thing and takes the heat. And then he gets an ultimatum from Tony, the cop, either leave or you're going to jail. So he leaves. Does the selfish thing, wants Fiona to come with him, but Fiona's not leaving that family, not in season 1. So he leaves. Comes back in season 2, season 3, and turns out that he is now married to the daughter of a drug lord. And don't know how he got involved there, but basically he gets to keep his life by taking that daughter, moving her back to the United States with her, so that she can stay away from her true love, which is her father's drug rival. So very, very wild story. A guy who comes from a wealthy family and should have been a doctor ends up being married to a big time drug cartel's daughter. And then while he's married, then still has a relationship with Fiona. And so their relationship is off and on. He does love Fiona, but at the end of the day, right, he made some life decisions to where he was kind of just, he was going from one crazy decision to the next. And, you thought he was done. You thought pretty much that he got killed eventually by the drug cartel. But turns out he didn't. Turns out that I think it's in season 5 he comes back. Gus is now in the picture. She's married to Gus, but she still has feelings for Steve/Jimmy. Ends up banging him a few times, and that ultimately ends her relationship with Gus. But finally, I think he goes by the name of Jack. I don't think they really say at all how he didn't get killed by the drug cartel and how he comes back as Jack and seems to be thriving more than ever as a thief. But he does end up coming back, and finally Fiona sends him away saying, hey, leave me alone so I can let you go. And we never hear or see from Steve/Jimmy/Jack again. But again, I put him as number 1 because I think the show wanted him to be number 1. Gave him the most screen time, gave him his own scenes. I mean, he had several scenes where it was just him or his South American wife, who, by the way, was very good looking. And so it wasn't just, him and Fiona in scenes together. So Steve/Jimmy is number 1 on the list of, I guess, my list of who Fiona Gallagher dated. And there is my top 5 list of the men in Fiona's life. So we went number 5, Gus, number 4, Ford, number 3, Mike, number 2, Sean, and number 1, Steve/Jimmy. At the end of the day, Fiona Gallagher ends up with nobody. She gets on a plane at the end of season 9 to who knows where, all by herself. If I had to guess, Fiona Gallagher probably meets a man, and then that probably doesn't work out. But that's it for the video. This was probably a little bit longer than I wanted it to be, but I have just really enjoyed watching Shameless. I really enjoyed Fiona Gallagher's character. Some of their storyline and who she dated and how they broke up, to me, was a little far-fetched and a little crazy. But that's Shameless for you. And so if you liked this, please make sure that you subscribe, like the video, turn the notifications on, and make sure that you check out my YouTube shorts. And then we'll be back next week with some other Shameless content for you. See ya.